Hey guys, Ed Watson here. I thought I'd make a short video showing the creation of my CBM joypad. This is a companion piece to the SuperPet Mini that I built several months back. If you're watching this, chances are you've seen my SuperPet Mini build video. If not, I'll leave a link in the video's description below. As you might be aware, joysticks weren't widely used with pet computers. In fact, I don't think they were a thing at all. So I thought I'd look into making a vintage-style joypad that might be more in line with the era. That would mean lose the stick part of the joystick and make a small button keypad that responds to up, down, left, right joystick directions. And I did it for no other reason than because I can and it's fun. So let's get to it. Everything centers around this first part. A USB PC to joystick encoder board. It comes with everything you need to connect any 5-pin joystick to the Raspberry Pi. Next, we need some buttons to press. For this, I bought a bunch of Cherry MX Blue key switches. These are the extra clicky type, perfect for that retro sound. Some keycaps. I ended up buying an entire keyboard's worth of translucent keycaps. I know it sounds insanely overboard for this project, and in fact it is, but I needed specific keys like the 4 cursor keys and the numeric 4 and 6 keys for pet emulation games. Finally, some Avery clear shipping labels needed for the front CBM logo. There's not much in the way of 3D printed parts here. Only a top and bottom piece is required for this project. Rather than recreate the wheel, I turned to a case design by Matthias Progel, who captured that retro look perfectly. The top has 15 square openings that allow the cherry switches to snap into place. The bottom is simply a cover plate that has 4 screws to fix it to the top. As you can see, there's quite a bit of material that needs to be removed from the top's inside shell. This activity definitely takes a lot of patience, but with some perseverance and luck, it eventually came out without casualties. I said casualties, not cavities. Now it's time for some paint. As I did with the SuperPet, I used Rust-Oleum's Heirloom White paint for that natural retro look. The icing on the cake is to create a joypad logo. I based this on the original SuperPet logo, changing it slightly to look like this. There really isn't too much to this thing. The main component is this zero delay arcade USB encoder PC to joystick board. Man, that's a mouthful. Reminds me of Ralphie's line in Christmas Story. With this turnkey solution, all you have to do is simply connect your controls to the encoder board with the included wires. Plug it into the Raspberry Pi's USB port, and away you go. And that would have been the case here too, but the board and wires are too big to fit inside the case. So the only thing I could do was remove the button sockets to allow for the proper clearance. As you can see, once the board is in the case, there simply isn't enough room for anything else, especially once wires and switches are installed. The buttons I cared about are subsequently wired to A and B, X and Y, L1 and L2, R1, Select, Start, Home Mode, and the joystick up, down, right, and left directions. Now let's turn our attention to the green and red LEDs on the board. When the board receives power, you would think that one of these LEDs would get a direct feed from the 5-volt line to indicate power, but that doesn't appear to be the case. When looking at the back side of the board, The positive anode of the LED traces back to the encoder chip, which must do some sort of handshaking or initialization before the D1 LED is turned on. In any event, I wanted to see this LED rather than bury it inside the case, so I removed it from the board and integrated it to the top of the case. Same goes for the D2 LED. This is where that home mode button comes into play. When that button is pressed, the D2 LED lights and the interface goes into a so-called analog mode, which doesn't do much for this application, but it does make each of the buttons have two distinct mappings, one in digital and one in analog. Cool, but kind of useless for this situation. But the lights change, which is damn cool. So I integrated that LED too and wired one of the buttons to switch between modes. As you can see, when looking at the back of the board, there's a 5-volt rail that is common between all the components that require it, including the switches. I could have made a single point harness for all the switches, but I ended up wiring separate 5-volt wires for each switch. It's a bit bulkier in the end, but I thought it was the most straightforward. I used this layout when connecting the switches. The blue highlights show what switch positions are wired to the specific board functions. The green highlights show the symbol on the physical key itself, and the yellow highlights show the software key mapping. Finally, we install the keycaps. So I showed the new joypad to my dad. He loved it, but the very first thing he said was, "Do the buttons light up?" Looks like it's back to the drawing board. I picked up some 1.8mm green LEDs that were made specifically to be inserted into the Cherry MX switches. So here we have a Cherry switch. I'm going to take the LED and insert it into the provided opening. On the back of the switch are 2 posts. Between them is 5 volts. All we need to do is solder a 1K resistor between the positive lead and the plus 5 volt post. The remaining LED lead will be connected directly to the negative post. Wash, rinse, and repeat for all the remaining buttons. And now we have all buttons lit up with that groovy retro green color. And here it is in action, being put through its paces by my wife, the reigning household Miss Pac-Man champion. Looks like it's working. Almost too good from the looks of it. That looks like fun. Can I have a turn?
No way, go get your own.
So that's it. I didn't show the setup for Emulation Station since I covered that in my earlier SuperPet video. So take a look at that video if you're looking for configuration help. Now it's time to play the dick out of Pet Space Invaders. So that's it for me this time around. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.